All right, welcome into the stream. It is Gaming with Derek. As always, each week we're previewing the Browns game with their opponent. This week they've got the Baltimore Ravens. So joining me today is the Ravens Director of Social Media and Digital Host, Garrett Downing, also a former News 5 employee. Garrett, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining in.
Absolutely, Derek. Thanks for having me. This takes me back to my roots. I'm an Ohio guy here, so born in Cleveland, grew up in Columbus, worked at Channel 5 for about a year and a half. So went to OU. So, it's always exciting. I still got a lot of friends and family that live in Ohio and in the Cleveland area. So I always joke. You probably got a tape somewhere in the Channel 5 studios of when I went to when I announced I was going to Baltimore. I think I still have friends and family that disowned me for making the move from covering the Browns to covering the Ravens.
Oh, I can imagine. I can only imagine what that's like. But yeah, let's talk game. Obviously, a big game for the Ravens last night, a big win over the Cowboys, which keeps you guys in playoff contention as you search for that wild card. Same thing with the Browns. But just your takeaway from last night's game and what you thought about the Ravens.
Yeah, it was really a game that the Ravens needed. I mean, they were sitting here on a 3-game losing skid. And this is a team that came into the season with obviously big expectations. They went 14-2 last year. Lamar Jackson was the unanimous MVP. So there were understandably high expectations for the Ravens coming into this year. And there's been some things that have been a struggle for this year. The offense hasn't been as smooth as it was last year. I don't think they've caught anybody by surprise, certainly, like they did to some degree last year. And so they kind of found themselves in a situation. They're 6-5, 5 games left, backs against the wall, need to at least probably win 4 of those 5, if not all 5 games to get into the playoffs this year, just considering how tight that AFC race is. And they're looking up at the Browns, they're looking up at the Dolphins, looking up at the Steelers. And so basically they're in a position where you got to win. And against the Cowboys team that, has struggled this year. So I thought it was an important step for them. And it sets up a really interesting final quarter of the season.
Yeah, and just so everybody's aware, everybody who's watching via all the social media platforms that we're on, mostly Facebook, you guys can comment, ask questions as we preview this game. And then the gaming portion of this segment is Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Last week it was fairly entertaining with our guy Jared Stillman out of Nashville when we were previewing the Titans game. So I'll be interested to see how we take on this game. And oh, by the way, I will be helping you out. We won't be going against each other. So
All right. Well,
we
I'm
can.
gonna need a phone of the friend as much as possible. So I'm depending on you, Derek.
So we're gonna equally look not smart today. Real quick, obviously the big storyline yesterday in the game or before the game was the Des Bryant situation being pulled off the field after testing positive for COVID-19. Just what's the latest today and what are the details?
Well, there's not really much that's, I guess, new today that we've heard. John Harbaugh talked after the game basically that the Ravens got an inconclusive test on Des Bryant that comes back, day of test. Found that out during warmups, and then they had to get a MESA test, which is a rapid test. Once they got that inconclusive test from the test from earlier in the day, and then he took that MESA test, and then that came back, and so that's why he wasn't able to play in the game. So haven't had any news today on that front. Des, tweeted last night about it. Certainly he didn't play in the game. And you really feel badly for him, given his story. I'm sure so many fans know that story, but, here's a guy that spent his career in Dallas. Then he was out of football for the last couple of seasons, had an Achilles injury when he briefly came back and played for the Saints in 2018. But then he's been working his way back. And I think that Ravens players talked after the game about how they knew, Des tried to downplay it a little bit going into this game, but his teammates knew that this game was significant to him. It meant a lot to him. And Lamar Jackson talked about that after the game. And when they found out that he wasn't playing, they kind of felt like they had to win this one for Des to a certain degree. And they were able to do that. So, there's understandable disappointment and frustration. And, it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens moving forward. If he goes on the COVID list, that would probably put him out for the game against the Browns. That's what the situation the Ravens are looking at. And, It's a weird year, 2020, man. It's
I
like
know.
I feel like whenever you feel like you kind of have a grasp on how a game or a season or a week or anything like that's going to go, things just change so rapidly, and we're all trying to figure it out and deal with it.
Yeah, I know. 2020 has been crazy. I mean, even on the Brown side of things, the last couple of weeks they've been dealing with COVID cases and having to shut down their
Mhm.
facilities and things like that. Miles Garrett missed 2 weeks. So it seems like pretty much every team in the NFL now at this point has kind of been hit with something in terms of COVID-19. So we're going to switch over real quick. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? I don't know if you can see the categories there.
Yeah, I can. I can.
The one in
Yes.
the bottom left, if that's hard to read, that's first grade reading. So I'm gonna have you pick a category and then we'll go from there.
All right. So it's already started than a fifth grader, but I can go all the way down to first grade stuff here. So that's I appreciate you giving me that option. Let's try third grade English.
Third grade English. All right, here we go.
Let's see what third grade questions are all about.
How many syllables are in the word telephone?
3.
That's an easy one today. That's a
All
good
right.
start.
I'm
That's a
one for
good start.
one.
Let's lock that one in.
You got that one right.
All right, we got that one right. All right.
I'm not going to go winless. That's a good sign.
Exactly. All right, so
Let's pick a subject.
when we talk about this coming week, obviously we play on Monday Night Football. The Ravens will be traveling here to Cleveland down at First Energy Stadium. Prime time game. We saw what happened the last time these two went toe to toe. The Ravens demolished the Browns. I don't know how much you've been following what the Browns have been doing. Obviously, being from Ohio, you might have been. What are your expectations for this game? Should it be closer or will it be closer than the first time we faced off?
I would certainly expect it to be closer. There's a lot of things that have changed, obviously, since that week one game. And that was a game that kind of just got away from the Browns pretty early on. There was an interception that Baker Mayfield threw off of a deflected pass on the opening series. Ravens marched down the field, turned that into a touchdown. That game, I felt like all of a sudden you're kind of getting settled into your spot there in the press box, and you look up and it's 14-0, and you haven't even finished your cup of coffee there at the start of the game. It just felt like that type of a game. Just got away from the Browns quickly. So obviously since then the Browns have gotten hot. They're 9-3. They've won 4 straight games and are coming off probably the best game of their season so far on Sunday against the Titans. So they are, I think, a different team. It's clear that they're believing in their success, and they're buying in, and there's something to be said for that. So I think it will be closer than that. I think that was 30. I think it was 38-6,
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken. I wouldn't expect a 32-point game again, and it'll be. I think there's going to be a lot of people around the country tuning into that game, wondering, are the Browns for real? Are the Ravens for real? When you have a primetime game and these are two teams in the middle of that hunt for an AFC playoff spot, I just think there's going to be a lot of intrigue and a lot of interest in that game. And the other thing too, Derek, I think is worth pointing out, like whenever these teams have played over the past, since John Harbaugh's been here in Baltimore, there's a lot of close games. A lot of these have come down to the wire. The Ravens have won most of them, but they have come down to the wire, even in years where the Browns haven't had very good teams. So I expect a tight competitive game.
Yeah, you're looking at a Browns team who, for the second time this year, is on a 4-game winning streak. But it could be history repeating itself. Last year, the first matchup, Browns-Ravens, Ravens took that one. Browns were able to take the second one again to split the series in the season. And you're looking at a Browns team that's kind of had to figure themselves out this year, right? No Odell Beckham Jr. for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I think it is now. They're learning that they're a running football team a little bit more than they are a passing football team, although last week was a little bit different. Baker showed out in the first half, had 4 touchdowns, and is maybe proving that he can be a quarterback who can handle bigger games. But this is a big one for the Browns because yes, they beat the Titans last week, but going into the season, it was these guys are good, but can they compete with the Steelers and the Ravens? This is their chance to prove that they can hang with the Ravens, even though the Browns technically have a better record. If they can come away with a W here, it looks better to the fan base and obviously looks better for the team. But in terms of like what you've seen with the Ravens and how Lamar had an outstanding game again last week, uh, how does the Ravens offense kind of match up with the Browns defense? Because this is a defense that typically struggles. Greedy's been out most of the year. Greedy Williams, Denzel Ward's been out for a while. Um, are there spots in the defense that the Ravens can maybe pick apart?
Well, just to go back to your larger point, I think I agree with you that this is the proverbial statement game in a lot of ways, really for both teams, prime time and all of that. And in terms of the Ravens offense versus the Browns defense, I think we saw last night the Ravens to some degree got, I think, kind of back to their roots of what they were for much of last year, which was a ground and pound team. They ran for almost 300 yards last night against the Cowboys. And I think that could be a recipe moving forward. There's been something that people have said here in Baltimore for a long time, dating back to the Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs days. And that's when you get to December and January football and you go on the road in the AFC North, you got to pack your defense, you got to pack your run game. Ravens got a good defense, and they've got a really good run game with 4 really good running backs and Lamar Jackson, who can obviously carry the ball quite well too. So I think that could be the recipe for this team down the stretch. And opposing defensive coordinators know that they can stack the box and try to force, Lamar in this offense to throw, and they need to be able to do that. But I think at their core, they're going to be a running team over the final month of the season.
I've got something here in Facebook. Obviously, you're the Ravens guy, but I'll present the question and then I can kind of tag along. Brian Johnson wants to know, do you think the Browns will beat the Ravens Monday night? Oh, kind of rephrasing. Could the Browns beat the Ravens on Monday night?
I think it could go either way. The Ravens are favored. I saw that I think it's a 1.5 point favorite that the Ravens are going into the game. So, if I was making a prediction right now, probably no surprise here as I'm sitting here wearing the Ravens shirt. I would probably pick the Ravens to win the game. But it's certainly one that could go either way.
All right, let's switch back over. We've got another question. You want to pick another category or you want me to go?
Sure. Let's do a 4th grade social studies.
All right, here we go. 4th grade
Here
social
is
studies.
our 4th grade question.
What is the name of the following landmark which is located in our nation's capital?
That's
Can
the
you see it
Jefferson
there?
Memorial, right? Yeah, it's a little hard to see, but I think that's the Jefferson Memorial. No, wait, no, sorry, Lincoln Memorial.
I was going to contest that one.
Yeah.
Lincoln Memorial for sure.
Well, I saw the water initially, and I thought it was the tidal basin there next to the Jefferson Memorial. That's right down the road from me here, so I better get that one right.
All right.
Your classmates
All right, let me
can
pick
only
this
help
classmate
you
real
2
quick.
questions at a
We'll,
time, so pick another classmate.
So when we look
Pick
at
another subject.
Baker Mayfield and the way he's he's progressed this season after coming off of a disappointing year last year. What have you kind of seen from him that you think will present some difficulties for this Ravens defense, who typically every year is solid?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably had his best game of the season, maybe his best game as a pro on Sunday. 4 touchdown passes. So he's a dangerous player, and I think he's the guy that just from the outside looking in seems to feed off of confidence. The Ravens tight end Mark Andrews played with him at Oklahoma. They're still really good friends. And he's talked before about how Baker's competitiveness as a driver, and there's a lot to be taken from that. So that's just the perception that I have. And the Browns right now are playing with confidence when you're winning big like they did against Tennessee, when you're putting up the kind of numbers that they did last week when they've won 4 straight. There's, I'm sure, a ton of excitement in Cleveland that they're feeding off of. So it just seems like, that's kind of where they are. One thing that'll be interesting in a Monday night December game, you wonder about weather. I know that's been an issue for some of the games there, that seems like there's some crazy weather. I am curious to see if that factors in at all. If it's a tough night throwing the ball, who does that favor? Browns have a great running game also, just like the Ravens. So is it kind of like an old school Army-Navy style football game where the 2 teams are lining up in the power eye? And that's the kind of game. That will be an interesting, I guess, subplot of this matchup.
Yeah, as you brought it up, I just looked it up, and it looks like
what's the Channel 5 weather report for this one?
it looks like Mark Johnson says now it'll look like 33 degrees around kickoff. No precip at all during the day as of right now. So it looks pretty good. And as you mentioned, it could be a very similar offensive game plan from both teams. Is obviously both will try to get the ball on the ground. Obviously, there'll be a lot more running by Lamar than there would be Baker, even though Baker can use his feet from time to time as well. Let's get back into another question.
Sure.
I'm gonna pick one this time. We're gonna go. I feel second grade art.
Okay.
This is gonna
Here
be a
is our
hard one.
second grade question.
True or false? Vincent Van Gogh was known for using short brush strokes in his paintings.
Hmm.
I'm going to say straight up, I have no idea
Ooh.
uh which one it was.
Well, so I've been to the Vincent Van Gogh Museum, so this should be an easy one.
Ah,
But I'm going to say yes,
When
true.
in doubt,
true.
just
All right, let's
say
try true.
Louisiana Purchase. That's what I always did. Well, that took a while, but you
That is
got it right.
correct.
There we go.
There's another one. We move on. We continue. Um excuse me. I brought up the Ravens
Let's pick a
defense.
subject.
That's one thing ever since, ironically enough, ever since they moved from Cleveland to Baltimore, that they've been known for. I feel like every week when I'm doing highlights of a Ravens game, it's solidified by some defensive play that they've made at some point in the game. How would you describe their just defensive personality and what makes them so good?
Yeah, I think it's kind of part of the fabric of who they are. What makes them I think it's just in their DNA. I guess that might be cliche, but I really feel like that's the case. When young players end up in Baltimore, they always reference Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs and watching that defense, and that just kind of builds an identity that carries on. Even though it's been 8 years since Ray Lewis was on the field and Ed Reed was on the field, were on the field, those guys have left an imprint, and we've all seen the highlights. And that attitude, I think, to some degree, the defense is kind of a culture. It's an attitude. And even though those players aren't in Baltimore anymore, they left that imprint, left that legacy, and it certainly is relevant and apparent today. And young players always talk about it. Like this year, the Ravens drafted Patrick Queen, linebacker out of LSU, in the first round, and he immediately started talking about watching Ray Lewis and wanting to play the position that Ray Lewis played with honor and live up to those types of expectations. So I just think that there's a standard, and that is still relevant today.
Yeah, it's kind of that thing, it's just like Pittsburgh with their defense that they just seek defensive players because if they're dominating that well, those are the guys they're going to get. It's like if you're a high school player and you're a good running back, you want to go to Alabama because they're going to run the ball. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
you kind of have that stigma. I had a question and I lost it there for a second, but you know, uh, oh, I know what it was. What's the, and players will never say this, but what's kind of the vibe right now at the fact that the Browns are 9-3 and the Ravens are 7-5? This is typically flip-flopped in a
Mhm.
sense where the Ravens are typically, you know what I mean? Are the players kind of looking at this as a game that obviously they're trying to get into the postseason, but to kind of put the Browns in their place, if you will, because they're just so used to being on top. Is there do you get any of that at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, when the players have talked about the Browns over the past few years, the talent there has been apparent. And I mentioned Mark Andrews being close friends and playing with Baker at Oklahoma. Orlando Brown Jr. also played with Baker at Oklahoma. Hollywood Brown, wide receiver, also is an Oklahoma guy. So I think that there's a lot of respect from those guys in particular on offense for Baker and what he's done. And then just overall, when you look at the Browns, I think that there's a lot of the talent has been apparent, like I said, and the Ravens respect that for sure. Um, so I don't know. I think that a lot of these guys aren't looking at it, to be honest, from the standpoint of, typically this is a reverse situation and we're the team with the better record. I really don't think that they care too much about kind of that history of, man, usually the Browns are not really in the mix and they're not 9-3. I don't think that they're viewing it that way. I think they're viewing it as this is a good team, ton of talent, well coached, and we got no margin for error in a really tight playoff race. I think that's more of the perception that they have going into this one.
Yeah, that's such a media question, by the way, that of course players don't think that way, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, something that we always talk about. All right, let's hop into this. I'm gonna go fifth grade astronomy.
Let's
We're
take
up
a
in
look
the
at the
ante here.
question.
Astronomy and fifth grade.
Which of the following is not a common type of the galaxy? A spiral, irregular, elliptical, or geodesic?
Uh, Irregular.
That's my guess too. Let's see.
Sometimes you just got to go with your gut. But
I
this
think we
ain't
got
one
that
of
one
those
wrong.
times.
Ah,
I want to say it was
Let's see if your classmate can handle
classmate's
this
gonna
one.
guess.
Oh, well,
He
you
said
can't win them
spiral,
all.
and that is wrong. Geodesic.
I'd ask the fifth
that
graders,
just,
but
I don't
you
even know
are
what
fresh
geodesic
out of
I
is.
have.
That just, yeah,
Goodbye,
that
everybody.
just
We'll
seems
see you
so,
again next time.
random that I felt like it couldn't be made
All right, we're out because that's literally one question wrong, and you're done with the
up.
game.
Oh man, high
So,
stakes.
I know, I know. I'm not gonna keep you much longer either. I do want to ask you this. Um, what do the Ravens have to do on Monday night in order to come away with a win? And what do you think the Browns will have to do on Monday night in order to come away with a win?
Yeah, I think if the Ravens are going to win, what they need to do is they need to avoid self-inflicted wounds. They've had that at times this year, whether it's penalties, whether it's turnovers, just kind of sloppiness. And I think that they've had games in the games that they've lost. That's been a common theme, and so they need to avoid that. I think that they need to, as they do every game for the most part, they need to have success on the ground and establish that ground game.
Mhm.
And then I think defensively, they need to capitalize off of turnover opportunities. That's an area where the Ravens have been really good on defense. I mean, that kind of set the tone. If you go back to week one, that set the tone.
Mhm.
Opening drive, Browns get the football. Calais Campbell gets his hands on it, bats it. Marlon Humphrey picks it off. A few plays later, the Browns are in the end zone, and then it was basically off to the races from that point. So if the Ravens can do that again, then I think that they have a pretty good shot to win the game. For the Browns, there's some similarities to the same answers. Their strength is setting up the run, and then that leads to the play action. That leads to the deep passing game. And the Ravens know. I mean, Nick Chubb had a huge day against them in the Browns win last year. So they've got to keep the running game in check. They can't allow the Browns to get into that play action situation. But if the Browns are able to do that, then they could be in a really good spot. And then I think what the Browns did last week is they hit some of those big plays, some of those chunk plays against the Titans. And that if they're able to establish the run and then use the play action to hit chunk plays, then it could be a Browns victory. So I guess those are, my keys to the game, and not exactly the most revolutionary just in terms of establish the run, stop the run. But I think when you're talking about AFC football in December and cold nights in Cleveland, it's back to the basics. It's establish the run, stop the run, avoid the big plays, and whatever team does that will be able to come out with a win on Monday night.
Yeah, for me, I think the Browns are going to have to somehow find a way to contain Lamar Jackson, whether it's on the ground or through the air, because the one weakness of the Browns right now is the back seven. Front four, outstanding. You got to stay away from Myles Garrett. That's got to be the game plan in terms of the Browns, in terms of the Ravens offense. But the middle linebackers are still fairly young. And the back four, again, without Denzel Ward, without Greedy Williams, they kind of really need to step up to keep everything in check. They kind of struggle defending the pass. And then obviously they're going to have to spy Lamar. They can't let him outside the tackle. Offensively, as silly as it sounds, because every coach says this, but it really is true for the Browns right now, is Baker can't turn the ball over in order for these guys to win. Because we know what Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are going to be able to do on the ground. But the X factor again can be Baker. If he starts to turn the ball over, it could get ugly. No turnovers at least keeps the game close. At least that's in my opinion. But Garrett, I appreciate you hopping on. Thanks for doing this. This was awesome. We're gonna end the stream, but you hop on, you stay on. Um, Real quick, score prediction. Actually, real quick. Do you have one?
Sure. Score prediction. I will say I'll go with a 24-20 Ravens victory. Somewhat low scoring, not too, but I think it's going to be kind of a smash mouth game. So I'm going 24-20 Ravens.
All right.
I know the people watching on the Facebook page probably don't like that answer. They're probably, I'm glad I don't have access to the comments. You do, so you can answer this.
I do, and I just had one that said 37-20. I don't know who they were siding with there. It just says 37-20. I'm assuming that was Browns.
Yeah.
Uh, but interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's gonna be a little bit just as close. I'm gonna say 21-17. As much as I want to say the Browns, I feel like the Ravens might pull this one off. The people are gonna
Interesting.
hate me, but 27 or 21-17. And that 37-20 prediction was Ravens getting blown out was the following comment.
All right. All right. I can't say that I'm surprised, considering the hometown audience. That's okay. That's
Yep.
fair.
Yep. Well, Garrett, I appreciate you doing this again. Thanks a lot for hopping in. And oh, we got one more prediction. Brian Johnson, Browns 20, Ravens 7. So, but I will talk to you later. Thanks for doing this. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Have a good one. Let everyone know I said hi over there, Channel 5.
All right. Will do.